Hello everyone, I'm Yuffie from Birds of Play, and in this video we're going to be looking at some translation differences between the Japanese and the English versions of the newly released final trailer for Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade. Let's go! So here's how it's going to work. At the very top we have the official English translation as it appears in the English version of the trailer. Then we have subtitles for the Japanese version of the trailer, and below that we have my literal or at least alternative translation of what is being said. And right off the bat we can see some difference in terminology, as the whispers, sometimes known as the plot ghosts, go by a different name in Japanese, being called feelers. We can only speculate what this actually means though. Maybe the whispers are generated by powerful emotions, and maybe those feelings get sent through time to work the will of the future of the planet, or maybe I should just stop guessing and move on with the trailer. Let's do that. Here we can see an example of a line in Japanese being represented by a grunt in the English version. This is fairly common practice, and there are actually more examples of this in the trailer. If you're familiar with anime and manga, you might have noticed characters shouting out names for special attacks or the like, and this also has a basis in Japanese martial arts. Or maybe Cloud has just really embraced the concept of dancing in the remake. No need for a translation here, since ABS are an international language. Also, I've always really liked Vice's Gunblade. Moving on. Here the line is significantly different. The English version asking Cloud to embrace Sephiroth, and the Japanese version saying that the future depends on Cloud. In practice, however, it all boils down to kind of the same thing, since if Cloud were to join Sephiroth, it would change the future. But speaking of embracing things and the future depending on you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and join the Birdhouse, becoming a part of our growing Final Fantasy family. We would love to have you around as we cover more of Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade and other Final Fantasy games. But now, let's get to the good part with Yuffie. I've never heard of these beans before, but the only reason I know how to spell their name is because there are other things in the original Final Fantasy VII that are called Dachao, namely a water god in Wutai that is also represented by the enormous Dachao statue on the face of a mountain overlooking Wutai. I wonder if these things taste anything like Kupo nuts. Not that I know what Kupo nuts taste like. Here we can see the name of Fort Condor being flipped. The reason is probably that in the Japanese version it's not named Fort Condor, but rather it's called Condor and it's a fort. This is similar to castles such as Osaka-jo or Osaka Castle, where the last bit Jo means castle. Or we could also mention Alexandria-jo from Final Fantasy IX, meaning Alexandria Castle. Just wanted to briefly mention that the English version has the same spells available on this screen, the first one being regen, the second poison, and the third one is barrier. Also, I want to report Condor ends up being a physical location in later installments of the remake, whether they won't have to beg for money anymore like they did in the original, since they get enough royalties from this board game. Who knows?
お疲れ様。ウータイの忍びさん。
あの女は兵器開発部門のスカーレット。メルフィーを殺した兵器を作った張本人。
これはね、私のアイデア満載の最新型バトルアーム。
In the Japanese, Scarlet takes a lot more credit for her creations, which might make Sonon's vendetta against her even more personal, since it was one of her machines that killed his sister.
いい思い出にしてね。誰にも話せないと思う。
The English version is very time specific, although I doubt that this will affect the gameplay in any way. This is the high point of the trailer for me. I had kind of a hard time playing Dirge of Cerberus due to the different mechanics, but I always appreciated its lore, and now we not only have Weiss, but also Nero making an appearance. Sweet! Here the English version chooses not to say anything, aside from a little bit of laughter. As far as I can tell, this is Nero talking about his powers sort of engulfing the battlefield, and him not being able to hold all of it in. Again, we have exclusive Japanese dialogue as Yuffie and Sonon team up for a combo move, Sonon letting the rage of Wutai or just the two of them manifest in a decisive strike, and Yuffie going all ninja with a secret move. There's nothing to report here about the translation per se, but I just wonder what is that reflected in the pupil of Yuffie's eye. Is that Vincent? Maybe? Which would of course change the story a lot, but there has always been a sort of connection between Yuffie and Vincent, even though they don't come from the same place or really know each other, but they're both these sort of optional characters, and they sometimes seem to be teamed up, maybe for that reason.
Hey, it's Peter the Other Bird. Thanks for watching. If you're as excited as we are for the release of Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade, then make sure to pack that subscribe button with your beak, as we have a lot more content coming. Join me for some bird sounds. Aha!